checked her weapon for the third time that morning. The plasma rifle felt light in her lower right hand, comfortable and familiar. She had carried weapons like this for 15 years, fighting in 6 different wars across the galaxy. Her people, they were born warriors. 4 arms meant 4 weapons. Thick armor plating covered her body naturally. Enhanced vision let her see in the dark. She was a perfect soldier. The humans standing across the briefing room were not. Studied them with her compound eyes. They looked soft. Pink skin with no armor. 2 arms instead of 4. Small eyes that could barely see. No claws, no venom, no natural weapons at all. Their equipment was old and basic compared to what other species used. She had heard stories about human soldiers, but looking at them now, she wondered why the Coalition even bothered recruiting them. The door opened and a human walked in. He was older than the others, with gray hair and tired eyes. His uniform was clean but worn. He moved like someone who had been fighting for a very long time. "I'm Commander," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "I'll be leading this mission. These are my people." He pointed to each human as he spoke. "Lieutenant Park, our engineer, Corporal Jin, sniper, Private Song, medic, Sergeant Lee, heavy weapons." They nodded at. She clicked her mandibles in response, which was how her people showed respect. "We've been assigned to investigate the missing ships near the Void Nebula," continued. He pressed a button and a holographic display appeared. 7 science vessels vanished in the last 3 weeks. No distress signals, no debris, nothing. Leaned forward, this was strange. Ships didn't just disappear. Even if they were destroyed, there would be signs, wreckage, energy signatures, something. "What do Coalition intelligence think happened?" she asked. His expression didn't change. "They don't know, that's why we're going to find out." The next few hours were spent preparing. Watched the humans work. They were thorough, she had to admit. They checked every weapon, every piece of equipment, every supply pack. They did it quietly, efficiently. But there was something else she noticed. They joked with each other, made strange comments that made them laugh. The young medic told a story about his first mission that made the others smile. Even Commander's lips twitched slightly. Didn't understand. Before a mission, warriors were silent. They meditated. They prepared their minds for battle. But these humans acted like they were going on a casual trip. "First time working with humans?" a voice asked. Turned, it was the engineer. She was smaller than the others, with sharp eyes and quick hands. "Yes," admitted, "your people are different." Smiled, that's one way to put it. She sat down next to and started cleaning a strange device. "Let me guess, you think we're weak, too soft, not enough natural weapons." Santana twitched. It was true, but it seemed rude to say it. "I have fought beside many species," said carefully. "Humans are not known for physical strength." "You're right," said. She didn't sound offended. "We're not the strongest, we're not the fastest, we don't have armor or claws or venom." She looked up at, "But we're still here, still fighting. Ever wonder why?" Before could answer, the ship's alarm sounded. They had arrived at the Void Nebula. The nebula was beautiful and terrifying. Clouds of purple and blue gas stretched for millions of kilometers. It was completely dark inside, with no stars to light the way. Perfect place to hide something. Or for something to hide. "Scanning," Jin said from his station. The quiet sniper had barely spoken during the entire trip. His fingers moved across the controls. "I'm getting..." "Wait." Everyone turned to look at him. "There's something here," Jin continued. "Massive energy signature, reading as biological." Biological? That made no sense. Living things didn't survive in deep space. Commander stood up. "Show me." The main screen changed. Felt her blood go cold. The energy signature was huge. Bigger than any ship she had ever seen, and it was moving. "Get closer," ordered, carefully. The ship moved forward into the nebula. The purple clouds surrounded them, blocking their view. Sensors were the only thing that worked here. Gripped her weapon. "There," said, pointing at the screen. dead ahead. A shape appeared through the clouds. At first, thought it was a ship. Then she realized it was something else entirely. It was a vessel, yes, but it was covered in something. Organic material that pulsed and moved like it was alive. The hull was barely visible under layers of strange, twisted growth. It looked like someone had taken a normal ship and let it rot for 100 years. "That's the constellation's Hope," said quietly, checking her database. "Science vessel, crew of 47, disappeared 3 weeks ago." "Prepare to board," ordered. "Full gear, weapons ready." As they suited up, noticed the humans had stopped joking. They were quiet now, focused. They checked their weapons one more time, loaded special ammunition. Jin adjusted his scope, organized his medical supplies with quick, practiced movements. Had seen this before. This was how soldiers acted before they expected trouble. "First time seeing action?" asked, standing next to her at the airlock. "No," said, "I've fought in many battles." Nodded. "Good, stay close to us. Watch our backs and we'll watch yours." The airlock opened. They floated across empty space toward the derelict ship. Up close, it looked even worse. The organic growth covered everything. It pulsed slowly like something breathing. They found an entry point and cut through. The inside of the ship was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered weakly. The walls were covered in the same organic material. It was everywhere, growing like some kind of sick plant. Activated her thermal vision. Heat signatures appeared across her vision. Dozens of them. Hundreds. No, thousands. They covered every surface, every wall, every corridor. "Commander," she said quietly, "we're not alone." Raised his fist and everyone stopped. He looked at the walls, then at how many. "I can't count them all," she admitted. "They're everywhere." For the first time, she saw something change in his expression. His jaw tightened slightly. His grip on his weapon shifted. "Stay together," he said. "Move forward slowly." They advanced through the corridors. The organic growth got thicker. It squished under their boots. Some of it felt warm, living. Then they found the crew. They were cocooned in the walls, wrapped in thick organic material. Some were clearly dead, but others were still alive. Their eyes moved. Their chests rose and fell, but they didn't respond, didn't react, like they were asleep or somewhere far away. "What is this?" whispered. Before anyone could answer, the walls moved. The organic material rippled, then it split open, and something came out. It was the size of a large dog with a crystalline shell that reflected the dim light. Too many legs, too many eyes, mandibles that dripped with clear liquid, and there wasn't just one. There were hundreds, thousands. They poured from the walls like water from a broken dam. "Contact," shouted. "Open fire." The corridor exploded with light and sound as weapons discharged, and heard something she didn't expect. The humans were laughing. The creatures moved fast, too fast. They crawled over each other, climbing walls and ceiling, coming from every direction. Their crystalline shells made clicking sounds as they moved. The sound filled the corridor until it was all could hear. Her training took over. She fired her plasma rifle in controlled bursts. The bright bolts hit the creatures and they exploded into pieces. But for everyone she killed, 3 more appeared. Next to her, the humans fought with smooth precision. Jin's rifle barked steadily, each shot hitting exactly where he aimed. His heavy weapon roared, cutting through groups of creatures, through something small and round. It exploded with a bright flash and a dozen creatures fell. But they kept coming. "Fall back," Commander shouted. "Fighting retreat, watch your corners." They moved backward down the corridor, still firing. His lower left arm ached from holding her weapon steady. She had fought in many battles, but never against something like this. These creatures didn't think, didn't plan. They just attacked in an endless wave. A scream echoed from another corridor. Recognized it. Vocal patterns. Other coalition soldiers were on this ship too. "Help them," she started to say, but grabbed her arm. We can't, he said. His voice was hard. We help them, we all die, keep moving. Another scream, then silence. 3 warriors dead in seconds. Felt something cold settle in her chest. Fear, real fear. She had been in dangerous situations before, but this was different. These creatures were overwhelming, unstoppable. Cover left, ordered. How long until we reach the airlock? 200 meters, said, her voice calm despite everything. She was still moving backward, still firing. I can buy us time. Do it, said. Pulled devices from her belt and stuck them to the walls as they passed. Small lights blinked on each one. Realized they were explosives. 30 seconds after we're through, said. Then this whole section goes. They reached a junction. More creatures poured from the side corridors. Too many to fight through. Jin, clear a path, shouted. Jin dropped to one knee and fired in rapid succession. Each shot was perfect. Each shot killed. Stepped forward with her massive weapon and unleashed a sustained burst. The heavy rounds tore through creatures, through walls, through everything. The corridor filled with smoke and pieces of destroyed creatures. Go, 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 pushed forward. They ran. Behind them the clicking sound grew louder. The creatures were following, always following. Lungs burned, her armor felt heavy, but the humans kept running, kept moving, was in front of her now. The young medic looked back, saw her struggling. Come on, he shouted, we're almost there. The airlock door appeared ahead, sweet relief. They could seal it, get back to their ship and... Something grabbed leg. She looked down. A creature had wrapped itself around her lower limb. Its mandibles bit into her armor. The crystalline shell was harder than she expected. Her armor was cracking. She tried to shake it off, but more creatures swarmed over her. Their weight pulled her down. She fell, hitting the floor hard. This was it. This was how she died, pulled down by mindless creatures on a derelict ship far from home. Then was there. The young human threw himself at the creatures, physically pulling them off her. His hands were bare and their shells cut his skin. Blood ran down his arms, but he didn't stop. He grabbed one creature and smashed it against the wall, grabbed another and threw it down the corridor. Get up, he yelled at her. Get up now. Strong hands grabbed her arms. Jin and pulling her to her feet. They dragged her toward the airlock while covered their retreat. Move it, kid, shouted at. Fired his weapon one-handed while running backward. A creature jumped at him from the wall. He ducked, and it sailed over his head. He was laughing, actually laughing, with blood running down his arms and death chasing him. They tumbled through the airlock door, slammed the controls, and the door began to close. Creatures threw themselves at the gap, trying to squeeze through. Jin shot them at point-blank range. One got its shell caught in the door. The mechanism ground against it, metal versus crystal. The crystal lost. The door sealed shut with a heavy clang. For a moment, everyone just breathed. Hard, gasping breaths. Looked at her saviors. Was wrapping his bleeding hands with bandages from his own kit. Jin was calmly reloading his weapon. Was checking her ammunition count. Was watching the door like he expected it to burst open any second. Said into his communicator, blow it. Roger that, his voice crackled back. The explosion was muffled but powerful. The entire ship shook. His feet left the floor for a moment. When everything settled, the corridor on the other side of the door was silent. They made it back to their ship. Once inside, finally let herself feel the shock. Her hands shook. Her breathing was unsteady. She had almost died. If not for, she would have died. Thank you, she said to the young human. You saved my life. Smiled. His hands were bandaged now, but she could see blood seeping through. That's the job, he said. We don't leave people behind. Your hands. They'll heal, he said with a shrug. Humans are good at healing. Takes more than that to stop us. Commander called everyone to the briefing room. His face was grim. We need to report this, he said. But first we need to know what we're dealing with. Jin, analysis. The sniper brought up data on the screen. I collected samples while we were retreating. The creatures are biological but unlike anything in our database. They work as a collective, no individual thought. They're part of something bigger. The organic growth on the ship asked. Exactly, Jin nodded. It's all connected. The creatures, the material, everything. It's one organism. The ship was being consumed, turned into part of it. Felt sick, the crew. Food, said bluntly, or hosts, maybe both. He zoomed the display out, but that's not the worst part. A new image appeared. His blood went cold again. It was huge. So huge that at first she thought it was a moon, but it was moving. The same organic growth covered its surface. The same pulsing, breathing texture, and it was heading toward Coalition space. That's the source, said quietly. The hive. Long-range sensors estimate its population at 50 billion organisms, maybe more. 50 billion. When will it reach inhabited systems? Asked. 72 hours, Jin answered. The system, 4 billion colonists. Silence filled the room. 4 billion people. Men, women, children, all different species, all in danger. We need to warn them, said. Evacuate. There's not enough time, interrupted gently. You can't evacuate 4 billion people in 3 days, the logistics alone. Then what do we do? Demanded. Just let them die. Commander stood up. His expression was calm, but his eyes were hard as steel. No, he said, we fight. Fight? Couldn't believe it. Did you see what happened back there? 3 warriors died in seconds. That was just a tiny fraction of what's coming. Fighting is suicide. Maybe, agreed, but it's what we do. He started giving orders. Contact Fleet Command. Request all available ships. Prepare defensive positions around system. Standard evacuation protocols for essential personnel only. As the others worked, sat alone trying to process everything. She had seen the creatures, seen how fast they killed, and that hive ship carried billions of them. Humanity had maybe 60 ships in range. Even with other coalition forces, they were vastly outnumbered. This wasn't a battle. This was extinction. Sat down next to her. His hands were properly bandaged now. You're scared, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, admitted, aren't you? Was quiet for a moment, then he smiled, terrified. Then why are you smiling? Because, said, being scared means I'm still alive, and while I'm alive I can fight, I can help, I can make a difference. He looked at her with eyes that seemed much older than his young face. Fear doesn't get to win, we do. Didn't understand, but she was beginning to realize something. These humans, with their soft skin and weak bodies, had something her people didn't. They had looked at certain death and decided to laugh at it. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, racing toward system, racing toward war, racing toward what might be the end of everything. And somewhere in the darkness behind them, the hive ship followed. The Coalition War Command Chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species. Stood at the back, still wearing her battle-worn armor. She hadn't slept since they returned. None of Ghost Company had. The council chamber was chaos. Everyone was talking at once, their voices rising in panic. On the central display, the hive ship moved steadily closer to system. 70 hours now, then 69. Time was running out. We must evacuate, an ambassador insisted. His scales were pale with fear. Pull back all forces and regroup at the core worlds. Agreed, said a commander, her tentacles writhing anxiously. System is lost. We can't sacrifice our fleets for nothing. More voices joined in. Abandon the system, save what they could, run. Then a human stood up. Admiral was old. His face was lined with years of service. His uniform had more medals than could count. When he stood, the room gradually fell silent. With respect, he said, his voice calm and clear, we're not abandoning system. The ambassador stared at him. 4 billion colonists cannot be evacuated in time. Staying to fight is pointless. Pointless to you, maybe, Admiral said. But those 4 billion people deserve better than being written off as acceptable losses. He pressed a control, and new data appeared on the display. I'm presenting alternative solution Omega. Leaned forward. What could humanity possibly offer? We have 63 human vessels within response range, continued. We'll position them in defensive formation around system. Our objective is to delay the Hive ship and destroy as many attack waves as possible. Delay? The commander's tentacles went still. You can't defeat 50 billion organisms with 63 ships. No, agreed. We can't, but we can buy time. Every hour we hold gives you time to evacuate other systems, time to study the enemy, time to prepare defenses. He looked around the chamber. We can buy you time with our lives. The room erupted again. Some called it brave, others called it insane. Watched Admiral's face. It never changed. He had already made his decision. The human fleet will defend system, said firmly. Any coalition vessels that wish to join us are welcome. Those who wish to evacuate may do so. We'll cover your retreat. Found herself standing. I volunteer, she said. Ghost Company fought these creatures. We know what's coming. I want to be there. Commander nodded at her from across the room. A small smile touched his lips. In the end, 17 non-human ships volunteered to stay. 80 ships total against impossible odds. The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. Watched the humans work. They moved with purpose, with focus. But she also saw them doing strange things. They wrote letters, long letters on actual paper. What are those? She asked, who was carefully folding a letter and sealing it in an envelope. Messages for home, explained, in case we don't make it back. But if you don't make it back, no one will deliver them. Someone will, said with certainty. Humans always make sure the letters get home, always, she looked at. Do your people not do this? No, said. If we die in battle, we die. Our deeds are remembered, but we don't send messages. Smiled sadly. That sounds lonely. That evening found Ghost Company gathered in the mess hall. They were eating together, sharing stories. Was talking about his family on Earth. Jin, usually so quiet, was describing his grandmother's farm. Even Commander shared a memory about learning to shoot with his father. Why do you do this? Asked, joining them. Share these stories before battle. So we remember why we fight, said simply. We're not fighting for strategy or territory, we're fighting for them. He gestured at the table. For family, for Jin's grandmother, for everyone's homes and loved ones. But they're so far away, said, light years from here. Distance doesn't matter, said, her usually hard expression softening. They're with us anyway, in here. She tapped her chest over her heart. Later, found herself alone with Commander in the armory. He was checking weapons, as always. She watched him work for a while before speaking. Can I ask you something? She said. Go ahead. Why do humans laugh during battle? When we were on that ship, when those creatures attacked, your people were laughing. I don't understand. Set down the weapon he was holding. He was quiet for a long moment. Have you ever heard of Earth? He asked. Yes. Earth is a death world, said. That's what other species call it. Our planet is constantly trying to kill us. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, diseases, predators. For millions of years, humans weren't the strongest or fastest or toughest. We were prey. He picked up a knife, tested its edge. But we survived, he continued. You know how we learned to hunt in packs, we learned to make weapons, we learned to adapt faster than anything else, and we learned to keep going even when we should quit. He looked at the laughing. That's us telling fear that it doesn't control us. We're scared, always scared, but we fight anyway. That sounds exhausting, said. It is, agreed, but it's also why we're still here. He pulled up a display on his tablet showing Earth's history. saw images of ancient humans fighting with primitive weapons, then more modern wars with increasingly sophisticated technology, thousands of years of conflict. "We've been fighting since we learned to stand upright," said. "Fighting nature, fighting each other, fighting everything. It made us good at one thing above all else: we don't quit when we should. We're too stubborn, too stupid, too determined." "Or too brave," suggested. Laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Bravery and stupidity looked the same from the outside. The day before the battle, couldn't sleep. She wandered the ship and found herself at an observation deck. Captain was there, staring out at the stars. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said without turning. "All those stars, all those worlds, each one with people living their lives never knowing what's coming." "Does that bother you?" asked. "No," said. "It's why we fight, so they can keep not knowing, keep living their lives. That's worth dying for." "You speak about dying very casually." Smiled. "Death comes for everyone eventually. At least this way it means something." She turned to. "In human culture we have an old saying, it's not about how long you live but how well you live. Tomorrow we might die, but we'll die protecting billions. That's a good death." "I've never thought about death that way," admitted. "Most species don't have to," said. "But humans grew up on a world where death was always close. We made friends with it, learned to accept it, and then we decided that if we have to die, we'll do it on our terms." The final hours ticked away. The fleet moved into position around system, was assigned to the flagship with Admiral. From the bridge, she could see all 80 ships arranged in defensive formations. They looked so small, so fragile. The hive ship appeared at the edge of the system. Had thought she was prepared. She was wrong. The sensors couldn't properly calculate its size. It was less a ship and more a floating mountain of organic matter. The surface pulsed and writhed, and from it attack waves began launching. Thousands of smaller organisms, each the size of a fighter craft. Then tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions. The sensors lost count. "All ships," Admiral's voice rang out across the fleet channel. "This is your commander. You all know what we're here to do. We're buying time. Every minute we last is another minute for evacuation. Another minute for the rest of the galaxy to prepare." He paused. "For those we leave behind, for those who come after, no mercy, no retreat." A chorus of acknowledgments came back. Human voices mostly, but other species too. "Make them remember humanity," finished. The first wave of creatures hit their defensive line. And the battle began. Gripped her weapon and whispered a prayer to gods she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. She wasn't praying for victory. That was impossible. She was praying that when this was over, the galaxy would remember what humans did here, what they sacrificed, what they gave so others might live. The first hour was controlled chaos. The human ships fired in coordinated patterns, creating overlapping fields of destruction. Creatures died by the thousands, their crystalline bodies shattering in the void. But for every 1,000 that died, 10,000 more came. Stood on the flagship's bridge, watching the tactical display. Red dots representing enemy forces covered the screen like a disease. Blue dots representing friendly ships seemed so few, so fragile. "Concentrate fire on Sector 7, Admiral ordered. Don't let them flank us." The fleet adjusted. Weapons blazed. Space itself seemed to burn. By the 5th hour, 3 coalition ships were destroyed. Watched them die on the monitors. First the shields failed. Then the creatures swarmed over the hulls, tearing through metal. The ships broke apart, bleeding atmosphere and crew into the void. "Close the gap," said. His voice was still calm, still steady. "Maintain formation." The human ships moved to fill the holes left by the dead vessels. They kept fighting. Received a message. Ghost Company needed her. Their ship was being boarded. She ran through the corridors, weapon in hand. When she reached their ship via transport tube, the scene was nightmarish. Creatures had broken through the hull somehow. They were inside, crawling through the ventilation systems, the maintenance shafts everywhere. She found Sergeant holding a corridor alone. The big woman had positioned herself at where only a few creatures could come at her at once. Her heavy weapon roared continuously, cutting down anything that appeared. Dead creatures piled up around her. The walls were covered in their blood, which hissed and smoked, eating through the metal. "Need help?" shouted over the noise. "Always," shouted back, not taking her eyes off the corridor. They fought together. 4 arms let her use multiple weapons at once. She fired with 2 hands while pulling grenades with the others. His heavy weapon never stopped. When its ammunition ran out, she dropped it and pulled out a massive combat blade. A creature lunged at her. She caught it midair and drove the blade through its crystalline shell. The creature screamed, a horrible sound like breaking glass. She threw it at the others coming behind it. "They don't stop," shouted. "Neither do we," replied, and despite everything she was grinning. They held that corridor for 40 minutes. When reinforcements finally arrived, his arms ached, was covered in cuts and burns from the creature's acidic blood, but they had held. The 10th hour brought a new horror. The fleet was running low on ammunition. Human ships began using captured enemy material as weapons. Showed the technique. Take the acid sacs from dead creatures, rig them with simple triggers, and throw them like grenades. "It's crude," admitted, "but it works." Watched as turned enemy biology into weapons. She had never seen anything like it. Other species would never think to do this. But humans adapted, always adapted. By the 15th hour, exhaustion was setting in. Hadn't rested. No one had. Coffee and stimulants kept them moving, but there were limits to biology. Even human stubbornness had limits. Then Dr. Han made a discovery. The science officer had been studying the creatures throughout the battle, collecting data with every engagement. Now she rushed onto the bridge, her eyes wide with excitement. "I found something," she announced. "The creatures are coordinated by a specific frequency. It's how they communicate, how they work together. If we disrupt it, they lose coordination," Admiral finished. "Can we generate that frequency?" "Yes, but," hesitated. "We'd need to reconfigure every ship's communications array. It would take time, and we'd be vulnerable during the process." Didn't hesitate. Do it. All ships begin reconfiguration. Fighter squadrons provide cover. The next 2 hours were desperate. While the ships modified their systems, smaller craft tried to keep the creatures at bay. Watched as human pilots performed impossible maneuvers, dodging and weaving through clouds of enemies. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. She saw Ensign's fighter spiral past the flagship. His ship was damaged, trailing smoke. 3 creatures clung to his hull. He didn't eject. Instead, he accelerated toward a dense cluster of enemies and detonated his reactor. The explosion took out hundreds of creatures, and one very brave human. "His fighter is gone," someone reported quietly. "Market said, we'll remember." They always remembered. By the 20th hour, the fleet had shrunk to 42 ships. Half their force was gone, but the frequency disruptors were ready. "All ships activate on my mark," ordered. 3, 2, 1, mark. Every ship began broadcasting the disruption frequency. The effect was immediate and stunning. The creatures that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly became chaotic. They crashed into each other, attacked each other. Their assault formation collapsed. "It's working," said, her voice filled with hope. But the hive ship responded. The massive organism adjusted, changing its control frequency. The creatures stabilized. "They adapted," said in disbelief. "It should have taken them hours, maybe days. They did it in minutes." "Then we adapt faster," said. "Modify our disruption frequency. Match them." It became a battle within a battle. Every time humans found a frequency that worked, the hive ship adjusted. Every time the hive adapted, the humans modified their approach. It was a race between human ingenuity and alien evolution. Humans were winning. But by the 25th hour, they were down to 29 ships. Losses were becoming critical. "We can't hold much longer," second officer said quietly. The admiral stared at the tactical display. The hive ship was still there, still launching waves. It seemed infinite, unstoppable. "Then we take the fight to them," said. "Direct assault on the hive ship itself. Target their command center, cut off the head." The bridge went quiet. A direct assault meant boarding that massive organism, meant going inside, meant almost certain death. "I need volunteers," said. "Team leaders only." Commander stepped forward. "Ghost Company volunteers." "We're not ground troops," Captain said, "but my crew volunteers too." One by one, every team leader volunteered, found herself stepping forward as well. "I go where Ghost Company goes," she said. Nodded at her. "Then let's finish this." They loaded into assault shuttles, 20 shuttles carrying 200 soldiers, the best the fleet had left. They launched toward the hive ship, dodging enemy fire, weaving through debris fields. Shuttles shook from impacts, alarms screamed, but the pilot, a young human named, kept them flying. 30 seconds to contact," shouted. "Brace for impact." They crashed through the hive ship's outer layer. The shuttle's cutting tools screamed as they bored through living tissue. Then they were inside. The interior was like nothing had ever seen. Everything was organic. The walls pulsed. The air was thick and hot. It smelled of rot and something else, something worse. The smell of intelligence, of malevolence. "Move out," ordered. "Stay together. Watch every direction." They advanced through corridors of flesh and bone. Creatures attacked constantly, but the humans had learned their patterns. They fought with brutal efficiency, conserving ammunition, using the enemy's own biology against them. Stayed close to. They had become partners over the long battle. She trusted him completely now. "How far to the center?" she asked. 2 kilometers, checked his scanner. "Might as well be 2 million. They fought for every meter. Private was hit, a creature's claw tearing through his armor. He kept fighting with blood running down his side. Jin ran out of ammunition and switched to a combat knife, his movements precise and deadly. Built improvised explosives from materials they found inside the hive itself. They lost soldiers, didn't know their names, didn't know their stories. But she saw them die bravely, protecting their comrades, buying time with their lives. After 3 hours inside the hive, they reached the central chamber. It was enormous. The walls stretched up into darkness, and in the center was the mind of the hive, a massive biological computer pulsing with light and energy. It was beautiful and horrible at the same time. "Plant the charges," ordered. "We have 5 minutes before they overwhelm us." The team spread out, placing nuclear devices around the chamber. Helped, her 4 arms making the work faster. Behind them, the remaining soldiers held the entrance. "Charges set," reported. "Timer activated, 10 minutes to detonation." "Everyone pull back," shouted. They ran. Creatures pursued them, endless numbers. The corridors became killing grounds. More soldiers fell, holding positions so others could escape. They reached the shuttles. Most were destroyed. Only 3 remained functional. "Load up," ordered. "Max capacity." They crammed into the shuttles. Too many people for the space. Found herself pressed against Jin and fought with the controls, trying to get the overloaded shuttle to lift off. "Come on," whispered to her ship. "Come on, baby, one more time." The engines caught. The shuttle lurched upward, tearing free from the hive ship. Behind them, the nuclear charges detonated. The explosion tore through the hive ship from the inside. The massive organism shuddered. Its surface split open. Light poured from the wounds. And then, slowly, it began to die. The hive ship died slowly. It took hours for the massive organism to finally stop moving. As it died, the creatures throughout the system went still. Without the central mind to guide them, they became nothing more than animals. Confused, directionless, they turned on each other or simply floated in space until their biology failed. The battle was over. Sat in the shuttle, too tired to move. Around her, the surviving members of Ghost Company were equally exhausted, was unconscious, his wounds finally taking their toll. Jin stared at nothing, his eyes distant. Hands shook as she tried to clean her weapons, had fallen asleep sitting upright, still clutching a detonator. Only Commander seemed alert. He was counting survivors, organizing rescues, coordinating with the fleet, always working, always leading. How many? Asked quietly. Didn't need her to clarify. 12 ships made it, out of 80. Maybe 3,000 personnel alive out of 40,000. He was quiet for a moment. We held for 36 hours. Intelligence estimates we saved 2 billion lives through evacuation and bought the coalition 3 weeks to prepare defenses. 2 billion lives saved, 37,000 lost. Didn't know if that was a victory or a tragedy. Maybe it was both. The survivors gathered on what remained of the flagship. Admiral stood before them, looking older than before, tired, but unbroken. You all did your duty, he said. You did more than that. You did the impossible. System stands because of you. Billions live because of you, he straightened. Rest now. You've earned it. But rest didn't come. 6 months passed and the news got worse. The Hive ship they destroyed was not alone. Intelligence confirmed 11 more Hive ships spreading through coalition space. World after world fell. The death toll climbed into the billions. Entire species faced extinction. Most coalition members pulled back to fortress worlds, concentrated their forces, prepared for final stands. It was basic military doctrine: protect what you could, sacrifice what you must. Humanity did something different. They fought everywhere, every system, every planet, every inch of space. If there were colonists to protect, humans appeared to protect them. If there were civilians to evacuate, humans bought them time. If there was a battle to fight, humans fought it. And they were losing. Earth itself fell. The human glassed from orbit by a Hive ship. 7 billion humans died in a single day. Watched the reports and felt something break inside her. How could they continue after that? But they did. Had been promoted to liaison officer between human forces and the coalition. It meant she attended strategic meetings, saw classified information. She learned things that terrified her. Humanity had contingency plans, weapons they had never revealed, technologies they had kept hidden, antimatter mines, biological weapons, planet killers, things that violated every treaty and moral code. Why didn't you use these before? A general demanded during one meeting. We could have one already. The human representative, General Sung, looked at him with cold eyes. Because once you use weapons like these, you can't take them back. You change the galaxy forever. We kept them secret, hoping we'd never need them. He leaned forward. Now we need them. The council was divided. Some species refused to approve the use of such weapons. Others were desperate enough to try anything. Stood and spoke. I have fought alongside humans for 6 months. I've seen them sacrifice everything, their homes, their families, their world. She looked around the chamber. They're not asking permission to save themselves. They're asking permission to save all of us. Even after everything they've lost, they're still fighting for species that wanted to abandon them. The chamber was silent. Humanity showed us what terror truly looks like, continued. Not the mindless hunger of the swarm, but the deliberate choice to endure any pain, suffer any loss, commit any sacrifice to protect others. That's the real terror. The willingness to burn your own world before letting it fall to evil. The stubbornness to keep fighting when everything says you should quit. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I was afraid of the swarm, she said, but I was more afraid of what I saw in humanity, because they showed me something worse than monsters. They showed me what it costs to be good, what it requires, and most of us aren't willing to pay that price. But humans are. They always have been. The vote passed. Humanity's weapons were approved. The final battle was planned, a direct assault on the swarm's home system. Every remaining coalition ship would participate. 40,000 vessels from dozens of species, led by 2,000 human warships, most barely repaired from previous battles, volunteered for the assault force. Commander tried to talk her out of it. "You've done enough," he said. "More than enough, you don't need to come." "Neither do you," pointed out, "but you're coming anyway." Smiled that same tired smile she had come to know. "Yeah, I am." The night before the assault, Ghost Company gathered one final time. Only 5 of them remained from the original team. Jin, and they had survived everything, against all odds. They didn't talk much, didn't need to. They cleaned weapons, checked equipment, wrote letters, just like before every battle. Sat with them, feeling like an outsider again, but pulled her into the circle. "You're one of us now," he said. "Ghost Company doesn't leave anyone behind, not even aliens." They laughed at that, a tired, worn laugh, but genuine. The assault began at dawn, though there was no dawn in space. It was just a time they agreed on. 40,000 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the swarm home system. What they found was beyond horror. The entire system was covered in organic matter. Moons had been consumed. Planets were cocooned. The star itself was being harvested for energy. This was what the swarm did. This was their purpose. Consume everything. Turn it all into more swarm. "All ships," Admiral's voice rang out one final time. "Engage at will, no mercy, no quarter, end this." The battle that followed was beyond description, fought in a blur of violence and chaos. Ships exploded. Creatures died by the billions. The space between worlds became a graveyard. She saw Captain's ship, engines destroyed, manually steer itself into a swarm shield generator. The explosion took out hundreds of defensive platforms, and her entire crew gone in a flash of light. She saw Private, infected by swarm parasites, detonate his own suit rather than become a host. His last words over the comm were, "Make it count." She saw General Sung lead a ground assault personally, fighting for 72 straight hours. The footage showed him still standing, still fighting, when his body should have given out long ago. Stubborn to the end. And she saw that brave pilot from the first Hive ship assault had lost her entire family when Earth fell. Now she volunteered for the mission everyone knew was suicide: deliver the killing blow to the swarm queen. The queen was massive, the size of a city. She was the source of all swarm, the mother, the origin. Kill her and the entire species would collapse. Loaded a captured swarm vessel with every antimatter weapon humanity possessed. She flew it alone into the queen's chamber, dodging biological defenses, weaving through swarms of creatures. Watched the final moments on her screen. Face calm and resolute, no fear, no hesitation. "For Earth," said, "for everyone we lost, for everyone who comes after." The detonation was visible from orbit. The planet itself cracked. The swarm network collapsed instantly. Across the galaxy, swarm forces simply stopped, died, became nothing. The war was over. But the cost was staggering. 130 billion lives lost from all species. 90% of humanity was dead. Entire worlds were lifeless rocks. Decades of rebuilding ahead. Was asked to write the official account for the Coalition archives. She spent weeks gathering information, interviewing survivors, compiling data. When she finally sat down to write, she knew exactly what to title it. "I encountered true terror while fighting alongside humanity." In her report, she wrote about everything she had witnessed. The first encounter with the swarm, the desperate defensive system, the long months of war, the final assault. She wrote about the soldiers who died, the civilians who perished, the worlds that burned. But mostly, she wrote about what she had learned. Terror has two faces, she wrote. I saw one in the swarm, a mindless hunger that consumes everything, a force of nature neither good nor evil, just endless need. That was frightening. But I saw another terror in humanity, a species that will endure any pain, suffer any loss, commit any sacrifice to protect those they love. She paused, remembering. The swarm was frightening because it could not be reasoned with. It could not be stopped by logic or negotiation. It simply consumed. But humanity was terrifying for a different reason. They chose to do the unreasonable. They looked at impossible odds and decided to fight anyway. They saw their burn and kept fighting. They watched their friends die and kept fighting. They knew they would probably lose and kept fighting. She wrote about the laughter in battle, the jokes before death, the letters that always made it home, the stubborn refusal to quit. Other species fought bravely, she wrote, but humans fought like the galaxy itself depended on them, because in their minds it did. They took responsibility for all of us, bore the weight of billions, and when the time came to pay the ultimate price, they paid it without complaint. She finished the report and submitted it. The coalition published it across all member worlds. It became required reading in military academies, a reminder of what sacrifice truly meant. A month after the war ended, visited Earth. The planet was still mostly ruins, but everywhere she looked, humans were rebuilding, clearing debris, planting trees, constructing new buildings. She saw children playing in the rubble, their laughter echoing through destroyed streets. She found Commander in a construction zone. He was helping build a school, carrying materials, organizing work crews. He looked older now. Gray hair lined face, but his eyes were still sharp. "You came," he said, smiling. "I had to see," he said, "how you keep going after everything." Set down the materials he was carrying. "Want to know the secret?" He gestured at the construction site. "We believe tomorrow will be better, not hope, not wish, believe, and we're willing to work to make it true." He picked up a hammer. "Come on, help me build this school. Those kids deserve a place to learn." Took a hammer, together they worked. Around them humanity rebuilt, not quickly, not easily, but steadily, stubbornly, because that's what humans did. They endured, they persisted, they refused to let fear win. That night returned to her temporary quarters. She stood at a window looking at the stars. So many worlds out there, so many species, all of them alive because humanity had been willing to die. She thought about everything she had witnessed, the terror, the sacrifice, the impossible victories, and she understood now, understood what made humans different. It wasn't their weapons or their tactics or their technology. It was simpler than that. Humans genuinely believed that tomorrow would be better, and they were willing to die ensuring that others would see that better tomorrow. The next morning, Young arrived on Earth. They wanted to see the world that had saved the galaxy. They asked about the humans. She looked at these young warriors, so eager and naive. She remembered being like them once, before the swarm, before she learned what war truly cost. "Pray you never have to fight them," she told them. "But if the darkness comes again," she paused, looking at a human construction crew working nearby, "pray they fight beside you." One young asked, "Why? What makes them special?" Smiled, "They're not special. They're not the strongest or fastest, or they're just stubborn, too stubborn to quit, too determined to fail, too kind to abandon anyone." She turned back to the window. "And that makes them the most dangerous species in the galaxy, because they refuse to let fear win. They refuse to let evil triumph. They refuse to accept that anything is impossible." "That sounds exhausting," the young said. "It is," agreed, "but it's also why the galaxy is still here." The young ones left, thinking about her words, remained at the window. On the street below, a human child planted a small tree in scorched soil. The child watered it carefully, protecting the tiny green shoot. That image stayed with one small human, one small tree, One small act of hope in a world covered in ashes. That was humanity, not the weapons or the wars or the victories, just the simple belief that tomorrow would be better, and the willingness to work, to fight, to die, making sure that tomorrow came. Whispered to the empty room, "Thank you." Somewhere far away, across the rebuilding galaxy, other species went about their lives. Safe, secure. Most would never know how close they came to extinction. Most would never understand what humanity sacrificed. But knew she had seen it, witnessed it, survived it. She had encountered true terror while fighting alongside humanity, and she would never forget.